Good morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it's the 23rd day of May 2024. Welcome to our show today. You know what? We're gonna get right into this because I've got my fabulous guests on today, Ralph the IT guy, Karen the Riveter, and Dr. David Kent. How you guys doing?
Good morning.
Good.
Good morning.
Awesome. Thanks for joining, everybody. You know what? I thought I had to testify in that hearing for Liliana Rose, but it's next week. So we can talk as long as we want today, or people get sick of us. Sarah does that.
Sounds like a plan.
Great.
Yeah. So yesterday we talked about, I know you were listening to the situation on my daughter, and I ended up getting a hold of her psychiatrist, and they did change her meds again. So hopefully we've got things back on the rails a little bit, but I was actually glad that we were able to just talk about that a little bit, because I know that all of us have been touched by like my dad with dementia. Everybody has got some of these issues to deal with, and the nation has abandoned pretty much everyone. You look at people that have problems with say drug addiction or any type of addiction for that matter. And I always see that as a lack of coping. The world can be a very, very difficult place. And, they've done a bang up job on separating us, having people not take the actual time to care for the people around them in pursuit of whatever it is on their checklist. And you know what? You guys are my checklist. I want to make sure you're okay. That's my checklist. That, it's not, they're pretty simple, but we really need to take the time to invest in each other's lives, our time. And that's a worthy cause. And I think that when we take care of others, that gets accomplished. Something else that really struck me the other day. So I've been talking to several organizations because I have the ability to perhaps put together a facility or several facilities, and helping people and having firsthand knowledge with dealing with issues of aging, as well as severe mental illness and coping with it. And I got off the phone with one gal earlier this week, and it really dawned on me that, something to chew on today. We really do fix our own problems when we help others fix theirs. And I think that the focus that we've all been brainwashed into by this satanic, miserable system out there is do this, and it'll fix your problems. It doesn't. It really doesn't. As we chase after these material pursuits or pursuits of things that give us a feeling of accomplishment and such, we really don't fulfill that need that we're looking to fill. It's only when we reach out to other people that we really find the happiness that we're looking for, in ways that people can never pay you for your time or what you've done, but it's just a 100% full out giving with no expectation of return. Yeah. And I think that's really where we find our hearts, our, the lostness in our souls. It's 100% give everything you have, and you'll find happiness.
Absolutely. Helping others is such an important thing, and society has become so everything's for me, not about helping other people. But it is the most rewarding thing to do if you can help somebody. And even the little things, helping people, helping somebody move can be very rewarding.
Picking up a paintbrush and,
helping somebody cure a disease, or, for me, helping them, from a medical standpoint, is extremely rewarding. You just feel good. And if you expect nothing in return, then God sees that and will somehow reward you in this life or the next.
Well, and I really do believe that the reward, when your heart is right, the reward in itself is doing something good. That is the reward. And you realize that just doing good in the world, I don't know why it is, but it is a reward. It is the reward, is the ability and the honor to be put in a place to actually just do the right thing. under all circumstances. You don't even need any more reward than that. I don't anyhow.
Yeah,
But
you do a lot of good every day.
I think we
just,
all, everybody
just doing
here.
things for the
Just
pure
doing the show.
altruism of it.
Or you think the show is good? Sometimes I think the show is beating people up.
No, I think educating people, is a very rewarding thing for you. I enjoy it as well. If you can teach somebody something and it can help them in their life or help them cope better with what's going on, that's what we call a mitzvah.
I think really what when I started BNN, the other thing that I saw that could be a really, really positive thing is just showing up every day, and as many days as you can, because people feel so alone. And I actually started something called Advances in Hospice, Advances in Bereavement, Hospice Hug, a whole bunch of things for hospice years ago. And it was bereavement care. And so I funded the whole thing, put it out there. I know we stopped some suicides, and it was used in several universities as required course material on bereavement, on how to help people get over the grief factor and the grief response and such, so that you could catch them before they got into like chronic depression. It was really, really, I loved doing this. I had a wonderful woman that I was working with on it who had 30 years of volunteer coordinating, as well as she was a social worker who, in the best sense of the word, just really wanted to be helpful. I mean, I really love this woman a lot, and reaching out to me. And one of the things that I realized that people quite often having a visual mode to contact people or a virtual mode was a lot easier than people sitting down face to face to actually share things or their feelings. And it also put all the control in their hands to how much they wanted to hear, how little they wanted to hear, how much they could process at a time to get over some of these very, very deep wounds. And so when I set this up, it's my thought was, what, I'm just going to show up every day and we'll see who joins in and who I can get on the show and such, to just be there. But realistically, just being a friend that shows up that feels normal, somebody who's sitting here, drinking coffee or, just hanging out. No perfect words. Like today, I can tell everyone out there, honestly, today, not one of us had any idea what we were going to talk about or say today. This is all extemporaneous.
Or be on the show.
Me?
Yeah, we're being on the show. Yeah,
Karen, wake up.
Karen. She's got the funniest little squeaky morning voice. You called Karen and said, "Hey, Karen, can you jump on this morning?" Yeah, I just woke
Did you have
up.
an interview? Was there supposed to be an interview today?
I was supposed
I
to
saw
testify on the trial or hearing for Liliana Rose, who was kidnapped by the state of Tennessee. And I'm going to beat this thing up till Christ comes back or they release her, because this is so wrong what's going on there. And then I got looking at the text message because I want to make sure I had the WebEx and everything that was for this hearing, because everyone got kicked out of the last WebEx meeting. We were supposed to be there for a hearing, and the judge comes on and asks everybody to identify themselves. And the way I was connecting, it wasn't letting my phone, or not my phone, my camera connect to the web. And they said, this is closed, this is confidential, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I'm Donna Brandenburg from Brandenburg News. I said, I'm here to help the families, supporting to the family. But I am from that. And they're like, nope, boom, cut. Right there, pretty much right then and there. The guy was nice enough to talk to me, and he wasn't hostile. And I came right forward and told him exactly what was going on. I'm not going to sneak around on people. That's not my MO. I'm not going to do it. And if they're doing the wrong thing, I can't help them, but I'm still going to do the right thing. So he said, yeah, we can't really broadcast this because it's a minor, blah, 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 on and on. And I'm like, but the parents consented and asked me to be here. And it was real clear to me that they had taken up a position of ownership over Liliana, who has gotten severe damage, scars, injuries while in the care of CPS. But they just unilaterally, the parents have no rights. They don't have the say over this. We're in charge here. And so I got voted off the island first. So then I was headed downtown, and one of the guys that votes for, or that fights for the J6ers, John, he came, he gave me a call and said, you've got to get this thing out here. And I'm like, well, until we have a change here, you know, they kicked me off. He said, they kicked every single other person in that, on that WebEx off shortly thereafter, and decided that it was only appropriate for the parents to be there and the court. And I'm like, how the hell does this work? You know, I'm like, they basically said, we're in charge here. The parents have no rights, no say. And they're guilty and they never charged them with anything, nor have they really had any, they just basically said, she's now our kid. We're basically trafficking her. You can see it by them giving her permanent birth control inserted in her arm. And the parents are basically at a loss because they had their child stolen by the state of Tennessee. So anyhow,
unbelievable. What happened with the hearing?
I got a hold of Tom, the dad, this morning, and I'm like, I was just looking at the thing. It's next week, not this week. And I said, so I've got my weeks off. So we're open to talk about whatever anybody wants to talk about here off the grid, or what's going on, you know, newsworthy or whatever. You know, I'm open.
There's a couple things that I noticed. The first one is Ohio. If you didn't notice,
yes,
does not have Biden on the ballot, and Tori talked about that yesterday and said that this is all planned. That the Democratic Party knows exactly what the dates are, but they plan on putting in what's his name from California, Newsom, in his place.
Great. Let's just go ahead and divide the whole country up with lots of candidates. I don't actually mind that, because
I want them to decide. See, I think the calendar. I got a little assistance on this subject from Dave from X22. I don't normally listen to him often anymore, but I was kind of curious about the debate stuff when it was decided. And so what he said was the June debate is early for an incumbent president to agree to a debate. So why would they do that? He thinks it's because they want to allow Biden to become or look incompetent, fail miserably with Trump, and then that would spur the Democrat Party to have to decide to replace him. The Republican convention is in July, so you got 1 month there. I also know Whitmer has a book coming out in July. I found out about that thanks to one of my followers who commented on my channel. And the Democrat convention is in August, as we know, especially from the Ohio thing. And I think that there's a good chance in August they're going to replace Biden with a different candidate. It's an act of desperation, but I think it's a great part of the awakening. I would love for them to put Whitmer on there. Put Whitmer on there, because then everybody's going to look at Michigan and all the garbage that she had done. Newsom would be okay too, but for us, I'm like, no. Let them put Whitmer on the ballot. She's not going to win. There's no way she can win. But let's get some more awakening out of that. That's fodder. You know, that's good stuff. Let's show her up and spit her out.
That's right.
You know, no matter who they put on, let's not forget, our voting machines are still controlled by the government. So,
hey,
I have faith about that one. I'm not worried about that one. I don't even know. I still don't know if we're going to have an election. Yes. But I do see a lot of people are working on monitoring the elections, changing the elections up. I don't think there's any. How could you possibly have any Democratic candidate win and the people accept it at this point? at this point alone, and I think it's going to get far worse, where there's no chance whatsoever that anybody can beat Trump as long as Trump is on the ballot. And let's say they put him in prison. That would be even better, because that would awaken the people even more. There's nothing they can do to stop what is coming.
Right.
So I'm not worried myself about the elections. I think people should be concerned, absolutely. And they should keep working on, I had a township board member come out to my house and ask about a petition he was working on. And I said, so I'm kind of curious, has anybody talked to you guys about the election, paper ballots, anything different about that? And he didn't even know what I was talking about. Obviously, nobody has any information about that. Nobody's concerned about that. He says, do you know how many people we have working the elections in our township? We have 14 volunteers. And I'm like, yeah, okay, you guys can do great. I do have faith in them, because I think they are all out doing the right thing. But what happens after it leaves?
Well, that was a huge discussion I had yesterday when I was in the courthouse. There were some detractors who are working basically for somebody who is in position who's not a Republican, and we got talking, and they were the ones that were recalling behind the recall of Stephanie Scott, who is one of the only, I think she's the only clerk in the state of Michigan who refused to follow the unconstitutional order by the Board of Elections, Jonathan Brader, and the Board of Canvassers, stuff to destroy election materials at the local level, and pass them on up, and the state will take care of you. Big Brother and Bradering it, going to the state was going to take care of everything. She is the one that refused to destroy the materials and break the law. So these people showed up, and they were arguing about what oh man, did I ever lose that train of thought? What she did wrong, and they were saying things like it didn't make any sense.
Well, they're saying basically that the local level was perfect because they were at the local level, right?
Yeah, and that is exactly was their thing. It's like, we never did anything wrong. And I've talked to several clerks that have said the same thing. And I said, yes, but I said, you realize that if somebody has concerns, it is the responsibility, no matter who they are, no matter whether you think they're important or not, it's the responsibility of the person in the office to listen to everyone's concerns and make sure that you've got an answer so that you can allay everyone's concern, and that it's addressed. Whether so like if somebody went to Nestle and Benson, Whitmer, whatever, and said, we got a problem, they can't just push that under the rug and say, no, we did everything right. That's what the clerks are saying. That's what those people in the office on the local level were saying. And I said to him too, I said, I hate to tell you this, but this is above your pay grade here where they're switching it out. I said, even if you do everything right on a local level, it's getting switched after that point, because it's a digital thing. And I have really come to the conclusion that our entire election system is nothing more than a simulation. It's a simulation. We don't even have any connect to this, because they're just making it look like they're just running a program. Doesn't matter what your votes are. It doesn't matter if they're counting them, because they're not counting them. They're just running an AI algorithm to make people feel that there is an election. They're trying to make it close enough to make it plausible.
Yeah.
And then people buy it.
And they do it by the early voting. That's how they do it by the early voting. They figure out how many votes went for Democrats, how many were for Republicans, and then they program it right into the counting machines when it anonymizes it. And by the way, no one's allowed to look at how we count the machines. No one can look at the source code, which is like a mystery. What if it's so good? Why can't anyone check the source code?
Right.
Because it basically changes the votes based on an algorithm based on early voting. So early voting is very bad. Don't do that. You're just helping them out to know how many ballots they need to switch.
I'm going to put something else out there too, because I really have come to the conclusion that I think the whole thing is a program, and that the ballot system right now is just for paper. It's just for like visual effects.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what it is, and that they just kind of calculate, and nobody will challenge it because there's no way to get the information that they have. There's no way to prove that there's any votes that counted one way or the other. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, and they can count it on the local level and make the clerks feel really good about what they're doing and such. And then but it doesn't really matter. They're running a program above that and disregarding everything. How do you have more votes than registered voters?
Yeah.
Somebody answer me that question.
Why are their voter rolls still a mess, not cleaned up? Why? I mean, all this stuff. It's just so obviously blatant. And if you want to challenge it, they just knock you down with everything they got. Look at Stephanie. You know, they'll take your license away if you're a lawyer. They'll railroad you through courts. You know, they'll fight any type of hand count, and then, you know, ballots go missing, or they throw in, you know, boxes of ballots in the middle of the night, you know, so the hand counts don't work. But by the time you get a hand count, it's already been, you know, months and months and months, and they've been able to fix it with paper, so it does come out right. It's just a joke.
Why did the final vote numbers out of the machines come in with non-integer values?
Whatever that means, you're right.
Well, like where you've got numbers after a decimal point.
Oh yeah. And why is it always like such a narrow margin that everyone wins? And why is it that the people get elected don't really care about the people? You know?
Yeah, 49-51.
Like
I'm going to look at it from the 10,000 foot view. I don't think it matters.
What?
It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, this election, because the people are waking up and they're going to do something about it. And that is more important than the election itself, whether it's a paper ballot or how badly this has gone, what the history of it is. The most important thing is that the people are going to wake up and get together and do something about it. That to me is much more relevant than whether we could possibly actually get Trump on the ballot and win with him. It's not about Trump, and it never was. It's about the fact that he represents the people and the authority and the power of the people. They can't stand him because of that. And the election is all about their ability to take the authority and the power away from the people.
To what?
When
I think we lost you there for a second, Karen.
Yep, I got a call. Their effort to take the power and authority away from the people, in part, but not limited to the elections, is something that it doesn't matter because the people are going to win. That's what I think. I think the people are going to take back their power and authority. So it might take some time, and I'm not worried about this election because I think something is going to happen by the time of this election. That's just my thinking.
It reminds me of the movie A Bug's Life, which I'm not a huge fan of that movie because I don't like the main character because he's a serial liar. But it's the same kind of thing where, you know, the ants basically come together and kind of take back their society from being co-opted by the grasshoppers.
Yeah, I think I became a precinct delegate, and Jeannie, my wife, did, and we went to the first big meeting, you know, for Oakland County, and we realized immediately, like, this is rigged, even at that level. So it's like, even if they don't cheat on the votes, they control who's on the ballot. You know, the Democrat Republican Party, and they're both corrupt. They're all bought off, and they control. You don't have any say as a precinct delegate in anything. I mean, you're just like a little person in the crowd. You can't even, it's just such a scam. So they control everything.
It was the Republican Party that was responsible for me getting kicked off with with the ballots. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah.
Because they're all in it together. No,
Yeah.
That's
no question.
One of the benefits of the U.S. Taxpayers Party is nobody getting bought off because there's no money there.
That is absolutely true.
Everybody doing this basically for patriotism, not for financial gain, which is wonderful to see.
So I got to tell you one thing that came out of that meeting with the 3 people that tried to remove Stephanie Scott or have her recalled because she refused to follow the unconstitutional orders from Brader and his band of thieves up there. So they were there, and I kept talking to him, and because when people are on the opposite, I'll usually talk to him and see if I can turn them around. It becomes a challenge for me, right? And we finally agreed that we were here to fight for our families and make sure that things went right, even though we might have, on a local level, and how we get to that point still was out in the weeds a little bit. So anyhow, we started shaking hands, and one of the gals, she's just like, she wouldn't shake my hand for nothing. And then she comes up and she says, the problem is that you're a politician and you don't listen to us. And I said, well, you're the one that wouldn't shake my hand. I said, you stepped away from that and you wouldn't have anything to do with it. Because I said, it's not about, I said, I sat here and I listened to you guys all morning. And, when somebody wants to push their opinion to the point of it's either my way or the highway, you don't make any ground that way. And that's pretty easy to see that's kind of the MO out there with a lot of people. Sometimes just listening and not even responding is a good plan. But
Donna, are there any countries that don't have a party system, that are truly have elections?
I'm not sure about that. I really don't know, but that's a good question. We could find out. So I want to show you a little bit of this video here. This is 8 items that FEMA will confiscate in an emergency and the laws.
I can't hear it.
We can't hear it.
You can't hear it?
No.
Okay, why can't you hear this? You should be able to hear this. It should go through the microphone. Are you here? Listen, let's try it again. Brett?
Nope, nothing.
Oh man, is that weird? I didn't change anything because I've been able to do that this way. Wonder what's going on with this. Strange. You guys can hear me just fine?
Yep.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, well that didn't work out so well. I have to mess with this just a little bit.
Interesting. But yeah, I've seen that video, and it's a really good video to watch for everybody out there, because
we should try and guess what those things are.
Well, the interesting thing about it is that he actually goes through the laws that were passed to try to give them the authority to take people's stuff, and which departments have that pretended authority, which is really interesting.
Well, let's try and guess what some of those things are. I mean, your house would be one, your property.
Well, let's see if I can click the I don't know why that I can hear it just fine here. That's really odd why that canceled that out. Do you have an idea on the settings that might I could change there, Ralph, my friend?
I got some ideas, but ones that I'm not sure I'd want to try during a broadcast.
Okay. Because I'm looking at yeah, well, okay, we'll have to just go with it then. Let me see if I can get the description.
You could try it in a different browser, maybe.
Oh, okay. Let's see if we can make that work. All right, that is. Oh, I know why it's not working. All right, perfect. Hang on a minute. Let me try it over here. Browser fault. Sorry. See, I knew you'd have an answer for me, Ralph.
Well, you know, I've worked around computers enough that that I've
How to
learned
kill
that the
false
one
mosquitoes in
the
the
one
area.
reliable thing you can
A
always
simple
count
but
on
brilliant
about computers
trick
is that they
designed
will
to
fail
eliminate
you when
all
you need them
mosquitoes
most.
around.
Okay, now can
8
you,
items that FEMA will
can you
confiscate
hear it now?
during an
Yep.
SHTF emergency. We're going
Okay.
to take a look at 8 different items, but we're also going to look at the basis for FEMA having the legal ability to be able to come in and confiscate. There's been a number of executive orders. There have been a number of laws that have been passed for national emergencies, whether it's man-made, whether it's a natural disaster, or it's even an attack. And obviously with the Cold War and the nuclear threats that happened back in the 50s, 60s, up into the 70s, there were a lot of laws that were in place to protect citizens and to make sure that our country continued. Of course, obviously with the civil defense program, it really involved individuals, citizens, people, the private sector. There were volunteer groups. There were funds that were allocated to help, whether it was Geiger counters or fallout shelters, and there was money to be to hand it out into different communities.
I do believe it's a great idea for everybody to have a Geiger counter and something that reads radiation.
But it was administered mainly by citizens working together. Back in it started in the 60s with JFK. They started talking about federal emergency management. And so there were some executive orders that were put forward, and it really changed the face of taking away from the local communities and the volunteer network to more of a federal agency. It really took away individual rights for the collective rights. And that's where a lot of the hoarding laws that are coming in. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to go through the list. But I want to give you a background because I'm not just putting this list down because I think this could happen. These are actually on the books. You can do the research. In fact, I'll have some of the links down below, or at least the executive order numbers and also the anti-hoarding law. Of course, a lot of it had to do with COVID. Now, 50 U.S.
There you go. Goes back to COVID again. Let me see if I can grab this. See if I can get his description below this here. I hate to keep it running because if we do that, the problem is I'm going to get a strike on me here.
Really?
Oh yeah. They'll give it. The YouTube will, and some, several of them will. Well, I've got one YouTube channel out and that's on, and they go to like 9 different channels. I can't even see his description on here. This is weird.
So if you want, I can just read off the categories he's got on
Here
there.
it is. I got it. So, okay, this is interesting.
So you can get a Geiger counter for $50, $99, $39.
Go ahead, Ralph. Read them off, please.
Okay. So we got food supplies, but not just food, farming equipment, including tractors and stuff. Water supplies, medical supplies, anything that generates power, fuel in whatever forms you happen to have it in, communications gear, so radios, anything to be able to do communications, firearms, and ammunition.
And
What about if you have any financial instruments, gold, silver, things like that?
Those are not covered in this video.
Okay.
well, in state of war, they'll take whatever they want. That's kind of the
Yeah, things change.
Things
I guess
change.
this is just FEMA can just do this anytime there's a disaster.
Yeah, there's the anti-hoarding provision. Section 102 authorizes the president to designate materials necessary to promote the national defense. It prohibits the accumulation of such materials in excess of reasonable demands of business, personal, home consumption, and such. So, yeah, this is where we say screw all of them. So this is incredible that they would have this. You know what? I think the president should get in there and confiscate all materials off of these big corporations. That's what needs to be done, who are already breaking the law with which antitrust should have been.
And this is the same problem that the prohibition on requiring the quartering of troops.
Yes.
Right.
That's where I was going.
Kind of thing.
I just pulled out my declaration to look that one up.
Yeah, because that was exactly what they were doing. Is anyone who was even thinking about possibly being a problem to the government, they would force them to quarter troops to host them in their homes.
Starved them out. They starved them out. They would
Yep.
take all their supplies so that they wouldn't. They didn't have to
Exactly.
kill them. They didn't have to directly put a bullet in their head. They just took all their stuff so they had nothing to live on.
Yep, it was an extrajudicial punishment that was inflicted on a lot of people, where basically, okay, you have to host these troops now. You have to feed them. You have to, basically give them anything that your household is capable of producing goes to keeping these troops going. Well, they're doing exactly the same thing with this.
I just posted that video on my Telegram channel, which is at Brandenburg, BRANDENBURG, the number 4MI. Okay.
Interesting.
Good thing for everybody to watch, because you can, they are saying that this is all legal because they've passed laws on this. And, if they don't actually have the designated authority to be able to exercise those laws, well, then the laws are kind of pointless and unconstitutional. However, it's good. I think it's a real good idea for everybody to see what they're trying to do.
Yes, and from the perspective of you had better be willing to do not consent. And it was interesting to me that you had arms or guns or however they put it down further on the list, because if they haven't confiscated our guns, at least in the state of Michigan, none of the rest of that matters, because I don't think the people of Michigan would be keen on somebody coming into their house to take anything else on that list. As long as we have guns in America, and we do, none of that matters.
There's a difference, though, too, between having them and being able to have the mindset to use them.
Yes,
and so, that's another thing. Somebody comes to the door who's stomping the heavy boots on in their little Nazi way. I mean, to intimidate people. There's not many people that are gonna decide to fight back at that moment in time. They'll flinch first. Yeah. And so unless there's a huge shift in what's happening and it's an all-out war, how many people actually would act in a situation like that? Very, very, very few right now.
Well, and think about this way too. That is basically saying that FEMA has the authority to disarm the constitutionally mandated military, the militia of the United States. How's that going to work?
Maybe that has something to do with the tornadoes and weather that is obviously being manipulated. And if a tornado hits a city, the governor can declare an emergency, and FEMA can come in and do all this stuff. I'm just speculating. I don't know.
Well, and in that
I haven't
video
heard of this happening.
In that video, he's actually got an instance of that happening. I think it was in Louisiana during a hurricane, where
way back,
they came in and they did a gun grab.
Yeah, I don't know. They want civil unrest. Obviously, they're trying everything they think.
8 items that FEMA will.
Hang on a second. Let me see if I can go forward here a little bit.
But yeah, he's also got on there, though, the provisions for doing anything that generates power. So
solar.
Solar, generators, wind power, anything that generates power.
Yep.
And it really changed the face of taking away from the local communities and the volunteer network to more of a federal agency. It really took away individual rights for the collective rights. And that's where a lot of the hoarding laws that are coming in. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to go through the list. But I want to give you a background because I'm not just putting this list. Now, 50 U.S. Code 4512. These are anti-hoarding laws. And the section 4512 really spelled it out.
Say goodbye to old, costly cable TV once and for all. This revolutionary invention gives you access to your favorite channel.
Previous areas in this code talked about medical supplies, but one of the things that really came to roost was 4512, that if you have certain designated supplies in excess of what's reasonable, and then what you're going to consume,
what's reasonable,
whether it's
right?
home, business, or personal, they can be confiscated. Obviously, there's a lot of different facets to this, but it's very open-ended. So the problem is, we may have a natural disaster and everything's fine. You may not have your supplies confiscated, but if it gets into a real SHTF where there is a national emergency and supplies are low, it gives them the right to come in and confiscate and to seize excess that you have. One of the things I want to mention here is FEMA actually recommends that you have at least 2 weeks of food at all times in your home, and also a certain list of supplies. Ready.gov is a great resource. We've talked about it before, but it's just for 2 weeks. So most preppers have well beyond a 2-week period. If you have a 2-week supply of food, you're typically, just having some supplies put back in case of a power outage or a hurricane.
Okay, I'm going to pause that just for a minute. We're going to go forward.
The other thing about this to think about too is there is a constitutional provision for doing eminent domain seizures of property for the public good, but it requires that the person that it's being taken from be properly compensated for the seizure of their property.
Yeah.
So this is the other site that he just talked about for ready.gov. Build a kit, make a plan, emergency alerts, mobile app. Interesting. I wonder what their build a kit is. Water, food, battery-powered hand crank, flashlight, first aid kit, extra batteries, whistle, dust mask, plastic sheeting, duct tape, moist towelettes, garbage bags, plastic ties, wrench pliers, local map, cell phone with charger, and battery backup. Oh, they've got quite a list here.
This site was promoted pretty heavily by President Trump when in I would say the last 2 years of the second half of his term. I think he was promoting this site pretty heavily.
Well, let's see what this looks like. Here we go. All right, this is pretty basic. Extraordinarily basic, actually.
Well, kind of like he was talking about in that video, we used to have all of the civil defense stuff that people used to do a lot more of that and be ready for a lot more things.
On a community level, we should be thinking about this. Really, if you have a community or group of friends that you're willing to stand with, that's not a bad way to approach it. And just say, okay, I've got 20 or 30 people I really care about. Let's get together and talk this thing through. With Y2K, when that all started up, we actually had a group that we used to meet with. And I remember when the whole thing, because you didn't really know which way it was going to go, but we actually kind of would get together and talk through those things. And we had a group of us, and I think that there was some really good things that came out of that, because once you have that knowledge on how to do it, no matter what happens or when it happens, you are ready all the time.
Yeah.
Gives you some confidence, So let's see what else he has to say here a minute.
Now, Executive Order 10998 was an executive order by President Kennedy, and it was based on food. So it gave a list of different type foods that the government was able to keep control of in case of a national emergency, especially a foreign attack by an adversary, again, during the Cold War. This listed animal fats, it listed oils, vegetables, any kind of food, whether it was whatever process it was in. It could be raw materials all the way up to what they call vendable materials, which could be canned foods, boxed foods, things like that. But it also includes cotton, wool, flax fibers, hemp, and any kind of natural commodity that could be used. And so it really was a broad spectrum of pretty much all the different commodities that we have. And then Executive Order 10995, which covered communications. Now, this was based on, public radio, different type radio stations, having an emergency broadcasting system. I mean, there was a lot that it entailed, but it did open up room for confiscation of ham radios or personal radios, whatever an emergency team needed. And that was one of the things that this is a lot based on, is at the whim of whoever is coming through to be ready to be able to confiscate anything they deem that's necessary. And then we had Executive Order 10997, which was for electrical power. It was for anything that generates power, substations, power plants, dams, hydroelectric dams. Of course, obviously, nuclear power plants. But it can also be brought down to your generator, to solar panels, to different things that can be utilized in an emergency situation and used by government agencies. But again, these are designed to restrict individuals and more toward the whole. And while that can seem like a really noble cause, it goes against everything our country was founded on. So number one is your food stores. If you have food in different forms, whether it's raw materials, whether it's canned food, boxed food, processed food, all of that is susceptible to being seized. Fertilizers, if you have any kind of tractors, any kind of farm equipment. In fact, one of the things about this executive order is that it would take the farming industry from beginning to end, even production facilities, of course, obviously equipment, and make sure that it was at least functioning, but it could be taken by the government to be able to continue food production. We saw a little bit about this during COVID, when baby formula began to be purchased by the U.S. government and then handed out to illegal aliens. And this really kind of upset a lot of people, especially mothers that had babies when formula was hard to get. So not only could they confiscate your food, they could cut off production of essential items to give again to the whole. Water.
There we go. So this looks like a really good video for everybody to watch. I think it's a great idea to watch this and just get informed,
And find places to hide stuff. Hide your emergency supplies.
Okay, so here's another thing that I think is really important is foraging. So you guys all know that I've done a decent amount of foraging for food. And I think that knowledge is super important too. And there's so many, just chip shots of things. There's most of the stuff that's around us you can eat. I can tell you that, like, say the daylilies, the tiger lilies, you can eat those. The blooms get a little rough, or a little tougher the older they get, but the younger they are, the more tender they are to eat, and it's very peppery. It kind of tastes peppery. So there's those things out there that are pretty normal to find, and you don't have to be afraid of it. If you have a little knowledge, you can go out and forage for food and find what you need to eat.
I'd love to see a few people planting more of the currants that used to be native here until they were deliberately wiped out to save pine trees.
I am a gardener now.
How's your garden going?
I got plants in my strawberry bed yesterday.
Ooh.
Decided to wait until after the storm because it was supposed to be like 60 mile per hour sideways winds or something, and it went north of us. So But we sheltered our little baby plants until after the storm, and I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. I've potted plants before, and put them in bigger pots. So,
but this is your first time actually gardening.
No, it's my second time, but the first time I was a kid, and I don't remember much about it. So I felt like, what happens if I kill all my strawberries on the first try? I would feel pretty bad if my strawberry plants died. But and it was kind of cloudy and chilly yesterday, but I watered them as I went along too. And I followed the instructions that I had found in my research. And then the sun came out yesterday afternoon. So I was really pleased, and they perked up later. So they survived the planting process. We're on a roll. We're going to get some straw around them soon, and hopefully today. So,
well, you have to. They are strawberries.
I knew that was going to be the next thing out of your mouth. I just knew it. It was going to be a dad type joke, Ralph. So,
and then we're going to get a poultry netting over them. So. I know really cool. Don't everybody worry. I know people, the first thing they say is make sure you protect them from the birds.
That's very cool. Well, I have blackberries and raspberries. If you want some starts to that, I've got enough to just about fill the world, and that always comes back. That brings up another thought is perennials. Anything that's a perennial that produces food, like blackberries and raspberries, that sort of thing. That's a chip shot to even grow, or you can actually transplant some of these forage materials for foraging on your property if you really like something. But you want some berries, Karen?
Do I want berries?
Yeah.
Well, I've got berries.
Blackberries? You have blackberries?
Oh, I don't really like blackberries.
Okay, well, I can't contribute to then.
Well, I think it's a mulberry out here growing wild. What are they called? Oh, well, these are wild blackberries. I don't care for them. And we have some wild raspberry everywhere. I really kind of despising it because it grows in places that we don't want, and it spreads, and it's thorny. And I don't know if I've ever made a pie out of them. We never have that much of them, but sometimes we go out and pluck them. I used to have dogs that would pluck them right off the bush. And we have some apple and pear trees, but they don't produce very well. They don't taste good. They're misshapen. They're like those creatures like orcs from the Lord of the Rings, but not even the good looking orcs, like the cancer ridden orcs. They're all like lumpy and funky colored. And so the dogs, we used to have a dog that would go out and pull the pears or the apples down from the tree, and she had to be careful because the bees would get to them before she did, and she might pick the wrong one. But we don't take good care of them. So
speaking of bees, I got another hive, so I've got to finish painting that hive, and then I got to go up and get my new hive filled with bees here, because the other two are doing fairly well. So I just decided to add another one, because they're really not that much work. If you got two, you might as well have 5 of them, because it's not that much work when you add to it. So that's my project for today. So I got a funny story. We've got one mulberry bush on our property, and it is hilarious because every once in a while I'll pull into the yard, and the neighbor will be sitting there stuffing his face with mulberries. And so he'll be sitting here like this, and all of a sudden I look at him, and his hands are full of, it's purple, and he's got purple around his mouth. And I just sit there just laughing. It's absolutely hilarious. Like, too fun. So
to change the subject a little bit,
sure.
Did anybody hear about Oregon? How a bunch of these counties want to succeed from the state and join Idaho?
No, haven't seen that.
Okay.
I've seen that out of Northern California, but never. I haven't seen that out of Oregon.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Northern California has tried, I think, several times now to secede from California and form their own state called Jefferson.
Well, this one is trying to just change the border of the
Interesting.
state. I'll post it up there.
Let's see. We've got what was the last video? A new primitive water filter. No, that's not it.
That's really cool.
Water everywhere and not a drop to drink. Water is critical to life, but it's also potentially deadly. According to the Centers for Disease Control, contaminated water killed over 6,000 people in the U.S. alone
You can
in
fast forward a
2023.
little bit.
And so in this video, we're going to take a look at some very low-tech vine, and we're going to set up a site.
He
in
takes a
this
vine.
jar, out of this jar into
Takes a
another
what?
clean jar, and then we're going to
He
sample
takes a
both
vine
these
and
waters,
puts it in that
sample
dirty
what
water
happened.
Okay.
in the direction that the vine grows. He puts the bottom part in the dirty water and he bends it and sticks it into a clean jar. And the vine soaks up that nasty water and filters out all the nastiness and gives pure drinking water.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
wow.
watched this video too, and this
Today we're going-
is a great video.
Yeah.
I think he used a grapevine, I think, for that, and we got those things growing all over Michigan, so this should be real easy to do.
And then he did it with a branch as well, where he just cut a branch off of a tree and took the bark off. He whittled it down so it would fit into a big 2-liter Coke that and filled the top of the Coke bottle with this stick sticking up into it, and it just dripped out through the stick, filtered out all the nastiness, and gave pure drinking water.
And then
Water is something that everybody should think about, because
Multiple
water is
sources.
going to be the most important thing, way before food. You can't go for more than a few days without water. And just imagine if your water got shut off somehow, what are you going to do?
Very cool.
Yeah.
I just put that up there.
in that video, then too, he explains the science behind why bacteria are too big to fit through the pores between the channels in there, and then also he had the water tested by a lab to prove that it's clean.
Okay, here's your crank radio. We talked about having something like that. There you go.
Yeah.
$29, $29.90, and here's emergency crank radio, AM, FM, weather radio, 3 built-in cable hand crank radio with operator flashlight for outdoor emergency and alarm.
Also serves as a battery bank and has a solar panel and can charge devices because it's got USB.
Look at that. An amazing thing. So hang on a minute.
Yeah,
let me
every
go.
house should have one of those.
Absolutely. Okay. Posting like a little badger here.
Plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Yep.
But
Be happy if
prepared.
it doesn't go that way, but if it does, that's okay too.
Yeah, it'll give you a good sense to have
Do
some
we
sort of
want to
plan
talk
and
about-
some sort of equipment.
Do we want to talk about food buckets?
Sure.
Okay. So
Um,
go there a minute. If you can get the food and you can find it, you still have to be able to put it up so it doesn't go bad. And this is an important thing to know. So
like
here,
Dr. David says about medical stuff, it's great to be able to improvise stuff in a bad situation, but as long as the supply chains are up, take advantage of them now and put things in storage you think you might need, right?
Yeah.
Same kind of thing with this. And for food storage, I tend to find that looking at some of the guides that are put out there by the Mormons and the Seventh-day Adventists tend to be really good advice on storing food.
absolutely, that's one of their the things that they do on a regular basis is they prepare. They have, I believe they believe in having about 7 years of storage, quite a few of them. And
I think the idea is that in Revelation, there's supposed to be 7 years of basically trials and tribulations, and so they want to make sure that they can outlast that. So they've gotten really good at doing long-term storage of food, right?
Right.
So one of the things that gets recommended by them a lot, though, is for how to store food long-term in like 5-gallon buckets, and the different lengths of time that you can store food in these. And you don't want to just go to like Home Depot and pick up 5-gallon buckets, because the problem is that a lot of those are made from plastics that leach chemicals into the things that are inside. And a lot of that actually comes down to the colorants. Either colorants, or sometimes they'll add like flame retardants to the plastics. So you really want to make sure that you find a good food grade bucket. And sometimes it depends on color. Like you'll go to different bucket manufacturers and they'll say, all of these are food grade except for the gray ones and the lime green ones, or something like that. And also a lot of the buckets are not made in America. So then you got to hope that the supply chain keeps everything accurate and honest there. So if you can find stuff like those buckets that you had on there that are made in America and food grade. The other thing about those too is that they've got a double gasketed lid, because not all bucket lids are airtight. And those ones, they've got the screw-on lids, so you can actually open them up and reseal them if you need to. And then inside that, then, you can store stuff directly in this, but a lot of times it's also recommended to package stuff up in a Mylar bag inside for extra airtight. And that's where those Mylar bags there, which, once again, a made in America product, that those are 5-gallon Mylar bags. And they make them in several different thicknesses. So you can get the thinner ones or the heavier ones. Basically, the heavier ones are going to be probably better for longer term storage, because they provide a little bit more of an air barrier. Even with Mylar, they are somewhat gas permeable still, which is why bags of chips go bad, because gas can still get through them. It's just very, very little. So if you can go with a thicker one, like a 7 mil like that, and then you can seal those up. They've got guides on there for how to do that. You can seal them up with a sealer, or even just with an iron.
In this little package, they have a sealer in it. You can see it there off to the side, a little wand there. But there's lots of ways to seal them up. There's a little sealer wand right there. Mini bag sealer included, and it's really pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
This is not like one of those processes that should be overwhelming to anyone, because it really isn't. It's not as hard as you would think.
Yeah.
Just try it.
Is the oxygen absorber the same thing as a moisture absorber?
No. It's different, and they come in different sizes too. So when we got into freeze drying, you do put oxygen absorbers in with your food. Just gives them a little bit extra protection there, and they have different sizes based on what type of packaging you're choosing. So.
And PackFresh there has a good guide for if you're bucketing stuff. They've got a good guide for how much oxygen absorption that you need for long-term storage of different foods, because depending on their packing density, there may be more or less air packed between the grains, and so you have to use a different amount of oxygen absorber to be able to absorb the oxygen out of that so that it's pure nitrogen, so that stuff in it can't go rancid.
Got it. So
And
I don't know if you know the answer, but what in a pill bottles, they often have a little little packet. Is that an oxygen absorber or a moisture absorber?
That should be a moisture absorber.
yeah,
Okay.
that should usually that'll be a desiccant, and they'll do that for pills because that keeps the at least from what I've seen, a lot of the pills use a gelatin capsule, and gelatin absorbs moisture, so they can throw that in there to keep them from sticking together. But there's certain foods too that you have to that you either want to use oxygen absorption or desiccant or both or neither, because there's certain foods that if you throw an oxygen absorber in them, they will tend to clump. So you don't necessarily want to do it with everything, particularly things that are mineral based. You don't want to use. Look it up, but the things that are mineral based tend to clump if you use an oxygen absorber. The things that are natural, things that grow, you generally want to use an oxygen absorber.
Got it.
I want to see if their calculator works here. This is pretty cool. Oh, I got to put this up. Let's say we say 12 months. Let's say 2 adults and 3 kids. Let's just check this out. And 3. Okay, 2 adults, 3 kids for 12 months. Well, let's see what we calculate what we need. Oh my gosh, this is cool. Check this out. Fills this whole thing out for you so that you can see how many pounds you need of X amount of things for 12 months. Dang.
Oh, that seems like a lot.
That's cool.
The right-hand column, 140 pounds of apples, 122 pounds of fruit.
Well, think if you don't eat your normal way, because I know like typically it's like, I believe it's like 400 pounds of rice if you do real basic stuff, rice, beans, and that sort of thing. So per person. So this is for a year. I actually think this is actually probably closer than what you might think, because you're talking 5 people there. I'm calculating it for 5 people.
175 pounds of rice. That's a lot of rice. Well, I think rice is such a great. I mean, people live in China on a handful of rice a day.
Look at what they have here, though, David. This is like if you can't go to the store and buy anything, and you got to be able to make very basic recipes. This is going to be a very, very basic recipes, right?
Yeah.
But if you had all of this, you could feed your family, and okay. So if we up it, let's just say somebody's got 6 kids. All right, 2 adults, 6 kids. I'm going to say grandpa and grandma. We'll add 2 more in. I'm just kind of curious now. Now you got me going here, because this is a cool thing.
I'm kind of curious if you just put 1 adult, what it says.
Okay, let's just say 1 adult. Okay, we'll try that one. This is a neat little calculator. How cool is this? Okay, 1 adult, 150 pounds of wheat, 60 pounds of dry milk, 25 pounds of flour, corn, 50 pounds of rice, 25 pounds of pasta. So you got 300 total pounds of total grains. You have 75 pounds of milk and dairy. You've got 185 pounds of fruit, 60 pounds of legumes, 60 pounds of sugar. Well, that's if you eat this way, right? 185 pounds of veggies.
They have my bleach on there. 1 gallon of bleach.
Yeah. 25 pounds of fat. And then some other essentials: baking powder, soda, yeast, salt, and vinegar. And yeah, they had your name on it, David. You got your bleach right there.
My bleach and duct tape.
Yeah. I think that's kind of a fun thing. So, okay, I'm going to put this Pack Fresh calculator on my Telegram channel. It
only has 40 gallons of water, though, for a year. That just seems low, doesn't it?
It sure seems low to
I
me.
think it's got a disclaimer there.
14
1
gallons.
gallon of water per person per day.
Oh,
So maybe
this
that's
you get more
cooking.
than 14.
drinking water.
Maybe it's for cooking purposes.
So we need more water than that to survive.
Yeah, I think they're probably assuming that to be able to store enough water for a year is going
Yeah,
to be
that's-
prohibitively space consumptive for most people.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty cool little calculator. Something to play with. How fun is that?
Yeah, I think, like I said, you look at the Mormon and Seventh-day Adventist stuff, and I think Pack Fresh probably markets pretty heavily toward the Mormons. And if I remember correctly, they're based out of Utah.
Mhm.
So even that calculator is based off of Mormon guidelines for how much stuff to store. So you look toward not just their guidelines, but also the companies that market toward them. There are some pretty cool products in that space.
Sure. Well, here's another thing that we have to look at when we're checking this stuff out too. Okay, so I'm going to go to the calculator here, and just to bring this up, how many people could cook off of this and actually make meals or turn this into something that isn't just raw ingredients?
Yeah.
I know I can, but there's very few. I'm 60 years old, so we all know how to cook. The older you are, probably the more skills you have in that. As far as we didn't have delis. I remember being a little kid, and we didn't have delis. We didn't have a lot of the conveniences. In Michigan, we did, and I suppose they had them in New York, but Michigan, everything was nothing was like that here. And I remember when I saw the first deli in a store. I was a little girl at the time, but I remember seeing the first deli going, wow, this is so cool. And you see all the salads and stuff and go, this is amazing. But we cooked like this. And the conveniences weren't there. With this said too, one thing I see on this list that is very much missing is they've got veggies that are easy to store, but there's no green leafy veggies there. You're missing a few B vitamins and some. I mean, you can make stuff out of this. This is long-term storage, but I'd love to see some perhaps freeze-dried spinach or something like that on there that you can add a few more things.
There was one that I got a little while ago. Let me see if I can find that a minute.
There's a farm I actually bought things from a farm a while back. I can't think what the name of it is, but when I was out in Utah, they had it in their stores. So I think there was a large Mormon influence there, and they had it was Anna something or other. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, so if you don't have a freeze dryer, I just posted a link in the chat there for it's a company called Koya. They have freeze dried spinach powder that you can mix into things like protein shakes and that sort of thing.
Augustin Farm, that's what it is. Sorry.
And so if you need long-term storage of greens and you don't have a freeze dryer where you can do it yourself, that isn't a bad way to go, because it's not a freeze drying process is a lot different than some of the other ways of either freezing or dehydrating stuff. And a lot of the freeze dried products that you can just buy off the shelf are made of produce that is not necessarily of good quality origin, much of it imported from, say, China. And so check your sources of where they actually get their vegetables from if you're looking for stuff like this. This one I tend to think is probably one of the better sources of this if you don't have a freeze dryer yourself.
Here's another one, that Augustin Farms, and I think they do a pretty good job too. And if you can actually buy this off the shelf in Utah. So the amount of different types of food. So you know how you go to My Patriot Supply and such, and those kind of things. They like just put together big packages of things. I believe you're probably paying a little too much for it. Just, I'm gonna say it right here,
Sure.
because they're making money off of this. But if you find actual people who freeze dry, you're going to, here, I'm gonna go ahead and go all. You're probably going to save yourself a lot of money, and you could just go to, say, like Augustin Farm and make an order here. So they have all kinds of things, like the butter powder, whole dry egg powder, veggies, cheese, that sort of thing. So literally you could go and put together the things you like to cook with from Augustin Farms. And there's a store out there, I don't remember the name of it, but there's a store out in Salt Lake City that had they had aisles with Augustin Farms freeze-dried products on the shelf. And these all come in like number 10 cans. So something to think about. So if you don't want to invest in a freeze dryer and learn how to do this sort of thing, which I think freeze dryers are great. We use ours all the time.
I think people have a hard time just keeping food on the table these days, and don't have, this is thousands of dollars worth to have the food for a year.
Well, even if you just did it for us, even if you did some products, yeah, and even started to cook with it. I mean, it doesn't need to be overwhelming, but just buy the things you cook with. Because one thing that we realize with our freeze dryer is you literally have zero waste. Because whatever you have, you just freeze dry it and throw it in a bag, and then you can use it later. Just same thing with canning. Like if for the U.S. Taxpayers Party, the one that I did all the food for, I had one extra can roaster full of chili that I made up for it that we didn't even touch. So when I came home, I started throwing it in jars, and I threw it in my canners, and I canned it up. So you don't have to quick eat food right away. You just put it up in increments that you'll use for your family, and it works pretty well.
The other thing too is nothing says you have to do all of this at once.
No,
right.
Buy
Start somewhere.
Yeah, buy one can a month for a while.
Yeah.
See if you can get that to work. Something like that.
Some dense calorie thing that you can pick up at a Walmart or something, just to have, like peanut butter, oils, things like that. Just spend an extra couple bucks if you can and put it away.
Let's see if they have oils on here a minute. You just said that, and I'm like, I think
I didn't see meat. Oh, there is meats and proteins.
Oh yeah, they have meats and proteins here.
And also, so I know if you've never taken a trip over to Gordon Food Service, I'd recommend taking a look at what they've got, because they got some cool stuff there too.
This goes against all the vegetarians that are listening, which is all you.
Well,
you can survive on
black bean burger mix,
protein and fat. You don't need vegetables to survive. You can live just on meat alone. It has everything that you need, all the vitamins, every essential nutrient. In fatty meat, I don't know how you store it, but it's something to think about.
We can it. Have you ever had canned meat?
Yeah, I mean, like Spam and stuff like that.
No, hang on a second, I'll show you. Hold on a second. Ding, 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 ding. As Donna goes to her pantry.
Yeah, so like I was saying, if you go to like Gordon Food Service, they do stuff cheap, basically, because it's not everything is cheaper. Sometimes you can find things for less money elsewhere. However, they have large quantities of things that are already sealed up for long-term storage by restaurants.
Yeah.
So that they can keep a stock on hand at their restaurant so they don't run out when they're cooking stuff.
Well, the other thing you can go to too is there are stores, because we used to belong to a food co-op, and I think I might spin one up again because it's kind of cool. You can get food in semi-trailers. So this is canned meat right there.
Oh, wow.
So,
how long does that last?
Oh, you can usually keep it. It's usually good for a couple of years anyway. And so
Okay.
because you got the lard on top of it to seal it in and such. But if you have canned meat, then what you do is you open your canned meat up, pop the top off, throw it in a like just a fry pan, really, because it's completely cooked. So really, or whatever, you can microwave, you can do whatever you want
You
with
could
it.
eat it right out of the jar.
Yeah, you can. It's fully cooked. And you can make sandwiches out of it. I've got some fried pork and fried beef and or not fried, but roast pork. It tastes like you roasted it in a roaster, slow cooked in a roaster, super tender, and it makes good. You can make barbecue out of it. You can just, sometimes I'll throw that in a pan and then use the juice in it and thicken it up and make a gravy. So it's mashed potatoes. It's meat, potatoes and gravy, really.
Well,
And
you can survive on that jar, just meat alone. Meat with that fat on the top.
Approximately 2 pounds of meat per quart jar. Now I've got some in pints, but that's about 2 pounds of meat in that jar right there. And so, like, if a person were inclined to do so like I'm vegetarian because of health reasons, and so, but if a person were inclined to do so, you could cook up some rice, throw some meat in with the rice. If you've got some eggs, cook your eggs up, throw it in there. You have some spices, and you can make a really decent meal out of it.
And you should have eggs anyway from your pet chickens that you have.
That's right, backyard chickening, because this is the chicken revolution, people. We need to plant them everywhere.
Mine have about 2 or 3 weeks left on them before butchering day.
You're a savage, Karen.
But the other ones are laying in there, and they're actually, I penned them in. We have them penned in, and they're doing pretty good with that. It took a couple of them a while to, because they were skinny and they could fit through some of the fencing. So we got an additional layer of fencing along that fence so they can't squeeze out. And I did some wing trimming, and the heavier birds I didn't have to touch because they were like, yeah, I'm not trying to jump the fence. And the ones that did like to jump the fence got their wings trimmed, which doesn't hurt them at all. And now they're doing good. They have plenty of room to wander around, stay out of each other's way, but and different places to kind of go and hide or whatever. But they're doing pretty good. So I'm getting now between 8 and a dozen eggs a day, which is a lot. So we're usually giving some away every week.
Now, you just said something really, really significant there, and I think this is as we work together on arming ourselves for the impending shutdown, which is, I believe, is going to happen. If we can have people in our trusted friends groups or our communities that we love, it'd be a great idea to have, say, somebody who has canning skills to give away to other people, so that instead of trying to hoard it all for yourself, disperse it into the community a little bit of the people you care about, so that people you trust, people that would come together in an event to try to help everyone, not somebody who's going to hoard it for themselves, but somebody that it's a great idea to have as many people in your community with some stock on hand, so that it's not all in one place. I don't believe in keeping things in one place. I don't believe in that. I think we have to work together. And when your friends, your family, or the people that would actually come together, or your neighbors, or whatever it may be, you really should spread the stuff around that you are that you are, accumulating, so that it's not one weak point.
Great point.
Yeah, you want it. Your strength in bad times is it will always come back to the people that you stand with in any situation. That's been my experience in business. Is like, if you want to succeed, you've got to know the people you're standing with, and you tolerate some of the nonsense, but those people that are just good people that want to do things for the right reason plus nothing. You'll find that you'll have a network of trust in those people, and that in your last day, you'll be able to stand back to back and say, it was great.
I think it's all about the team.
Yes.
This, even in business, a successful business boils down to the team. And survival is probably going to boil down to a team, because think about, I'm just thinking, like what a scenario would look like that you would need to get to your food for a year. I mean, can you just imagine what your world would be like? For
how
one,
are you going to cook it?
People like, what about people that come on your property with little kids and stuff that are like starving to death? Are you going to give them food? Are you not? You have to think about.
I wouldn't be worried about the little kids coming onto my property looking for food.
And people coming to take your food. One thing is, like, if it's a survival situation and you're, many months into it, if you're all looking healthy and full, and everyone else is cachectic and scrawny because they're not having food, people are going to be coming after you. So you got to like think of all these different things that could potentially happen. There's a lot to it. A lot more than just keeping the food.
Something else I think everybody ought to have on hand thinking about this is a fishing pole.
Yeah, I was going to say that, Ralph. Does everybody know how to fish? Because if you live near water, that's a great source of protein.
We're
and
in
that's a
Michigan.
fun thing to do anyway. That's a wonderful way to spend time.
We're in
Of
Michigan.
course, if you're worried about the right
water.
rules and regulations promulgated by the Department of Natural Resources under the authority of Gretchen Whitmer, that might be a problem for you.
Yeah, probably she would ban fishing, just like, she tried to ban hunting for deer and stuff. And I mean, who knows what could happen.
We had a good show, by the way, yesterday, Donna, when you left. Bill, this is the first time that Bill and I have been left on your show by ourselves.
Yeah, I abandoned them.
And he was so relaxed about it. It was great. He just continued on, and we had some really good conversation. I think it was a really great show, actually. And when it came to, we got to about 11 o'clock and we're like, I had asked him about 10:15. I was like, I noticed that you're in your office rather than in your truck. So do you need to leave at some point? Because usually he does around 10:30. And he seemed to be pretty relaxed about that, but I didn't know what he had planned for the day and anything. And we didn't know what your plan was going to be. Were you going to be rejoining us? Were we going to get a report or anything? So I said, well, we got to about that point, and I said, well, she wanted us to pray. We should have done that earlier. But so he said a prayer, and then I said, your line about God bless you, God bless those you love, and God bless America. And that's how we ended. We just kind of like, okay, see you next week.
That's great. Well, we didn't know exactly what we were going to get into. And so we waited for about, and it was a good hour or more to go in. And they were actually bringing in individuals who were incarcerated or that had cuffs on, going past the crowd that was there to support Stephanie. And they would bring them into the courtroom, but we weren't allowed to go in there, which was really kind of odd. It was very, very odd that they didn't have this open to the public, in my opinion. So all of a sudden, Dan Hartman comes out and says, well, this ended up just being, there was no judge in there, and this was just, a scheduling hearing and such. And we were looking at each other going, why would they have been bringing in, I'm not saying that I disbelieve everybody, but I disbelieve a lot of what I hear. most of the time. I always have questions, you know. It was like, well, this doesn't make sense. Why were they actually bringing prisoner type people or convicted people in there without a judge being in there? What could possibly have been going on? Well, we don't know because we weren't allowed in there. So we left the courtroom, and Dan was telling us what was going on with the fact that this was just for scheduling for them for the next round with no judge in there. But yet they brought convicts in there. And so we're sitting there going, this doesn't make any sense at all. So they kept us out of there. And something that I kind of wonder was, honestly, was with as many people as were there, was it enough to kind of change the outcome of what happened yesterday? So we sat around outside, and something else that I noticed yesterday that I thought was fairly significant. So the last time that we were there at the courthouse, and you have to make out papers, and they had us all make out papers to be in the courtroom, for those of us who are media, to be able to tape, record, or broadcast in the courtroom, right? So we all make out our papers, and we're waiting to get approved to actually be media in the courtroom, and then nothing happens, and we all go outside. It was really odd. It was an odd thing where things weren't making sense. But what I realized last time, and I saw something significant change when we went outside, and there were a few reporters there. There was one guy there from the Advance, and he was jumpier than a cat, just like this the whole time he was in there. Craig Mauger, the unofficial secretary of the Republican Party, deep state, didn't show up, but another reporter from Fox 17 showed up, and apparently he's actually been looking into things after we had the discussion. And I told him that everybody that's mainstream media is a bunch of gutless cowards and won't cover things, and part of the problem of our nation. He actually started doing some research, and we talked, and it was real interesting. So anyhow, the last time I went, when the reporters, he was included, it was him and Craig Mauger, they were going after Stephanie and trying to set her up with setup questions that had nothing to do with finding out what was going on with the day. They were trying to trap them. It was an entrapment thing. And I took my camera and I went right to them, and as they were harassing them, and I recorded it, and I posted it. And because I'm like, people need to see what let's make these reporters have to show their faces instead of hide behind the camera and go after people, to set them up and to honestly torpedo the truth coming out of people. So,
and hide behind editing too.
Hide behind editing, because they're shocked that I just posted with no editing, and they kept talking. I said, no, I don't edit. Whatever it is, it flies. And I do it live, and I try to post within minutes of it going out there, and they're not edited. So they don't go through editing. I don't hide. They hide. I don't hide. So anyhow, yesterday I watched. I thought I'm gonna do this again. So I was right up there next to Stephanie, and Dan. I was as close to it. I was the closest person to them, actually. And as soon as the reporters decided to get in and set, I turned my camera right on the reporters, because I wanted to get their behavior. And they actually behaved themselves, realizing not only are they on camera, but they're on camera, and that freaking Brandenburg is going to throw it out there for everyone to see. And you can't believe how quickly their behavior improved. Quick. They stopped acting like a bunch of deranged monkeys going after the one banana on the tree, and they started acting like actual human beings and asking questions and treating them with respect. So I'm just going to say it. If you see these reporters around, you get the cameras on the reporters, not just the people they're talking to. They're going to cover that in any way possible. And it's good to have one camera in one direction, one camera in another. Get the reporters, watch their behavior and how they act, and then put it out there without editing, and watch them change.
You know what I think is great about that? Apparently, the media is watching Donna Brandenburg's media.
The other thing that kind of reminds me
I think that's quite entertaining, actually.
It's hilarious.
The other thing that reminds me of is that story, I think it was a couple of years ago, where there was a gal, I think she was from Fox, interviewing like a high school or college football player, and he thanked God for the win, and then continued on with the interview. And you wouldn't have known that if it weren't for somebody else that managed to also take video of it and publish it, because when they put it up on the news, they edited out him thanking God for watching out for them that day. And they got caught because somebody else put the actual video, the unedited video, up.
It's so important for everyone to use your cameras when something's being recorded, because they can manipulate it for anything. So Scott Ogney was there, and I love Scott Ogney. He cracks me up. He's an amazing individual. He has put so much time into researching what's going on in our elections, and he's done it. He's basically used everything he has in order to get the truth out there. We were talking yesterday after this. We went over to Dairy Queen and got some ice cream and sat and talked after the thing. It was like, okay, time to have a mental health moment here. Time for a Turtle Sunday or something, So we went over there and we're talking, and he said the last time he was in court, because he's suing everybody right now. He's got cases going all over the place. They got a recording of him yelling from the back of the courtroom. They put it together to make it look like he was yelling at Stephanie rather than opposing what was going on in the courtroom, because he supports them. So they used him as someone to change the narrative. This happens all the time.
All the time.
That's why it's important for people to show up instead of just letting them control the narrative full time. So I didn't get to tell everybody this, but my friend, I've got a really good friend, and he asked me to come over to his restaurant the other day. He said, I have somebody that I want to introduce you to. And it was kind of a cool thing. He introduced me to Madonna's parents.
Oh, wow.
And that was really a very unexpected, and the outcome was unexpected. I think this is why we all need to have an open mind when we meet people, based on what we know, what we think we know, what's actually reality, so that we can see things for what they are. And I found out some amazing things that I had no idea about in the background of Madonna, what is fact, a lot of what is fiction. I got a personal invite to their winery, and her father, Silvio, is delightful. Her mother is delightful. Silvio is in his 90s, and he one of the stories that came out of it was, I guess she was not doing some things that made her dad very happy, and he basically told her, he said, you either get your act cleaned up here or I'll never talk to you again.
Does he talk to her son?
Oh yeah. So it sounds like the way that things are portrayed may not exactly be reality. So kind of an interesting conversation, and one I fully intend to pursue a little bit more, because when people are being talked about, or they have a certain persona that may or may not be real, because both sides are lying. I keep telling everybody that everyone is lying full time. The good guys are lying, the bad guys are lying, because this is like a spy versus spy situation going on out here, and people's lives are being destroyed based on what's being put out there in the news. It really is. I got to show you something that this is going to be fun. I'll be right back on, because there's something else I want to show you, but all I can tell you is her parents are absolutely delightful.
I noticed years ago, I used to watch the Duggar show. I think it was called 23 Kids and Counting, maybe. And boy, their story has gone off in another direction now too. But when the family would pray, they would depict this on the show. And I think it was this show. But now I'm remembering too, I think they did this with Duck Dynasty. They would pray in Jesus' name. And they would edit that out of the show.
Yeah.
So that you didn't hear that part at the end of the prayer.
They took that guy down too from Duck Dynasty. I forgot what they did to him, but something bad to get the father off the
Bill?
show.
He's got 1 or 2 books out.
So let me show you. This is kind of cool. So this was something that Silvio signed this. This is from their winery. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, he signed this bottle, and they're just as delightful as anyone you would ever want to meet. And something that's also really, really becoming really incredibly evident to me is how many people have been blackmailed or threatened. There's a lot. There are a lot of people that go in there to be a good person, and all of a sudden they're threatened, their families are threatened, and that sort of thing, because it's organized crime. That's what's happening here. And so when a person gets into something, there's possibly ways to get out of it, but we really have to be careful about our opinions. You can go after the behavior of people and say, this is wrong, I don't want any part of this, or this is not a good thing and such. But the people that may be behind it may be a mixture of good people playing the role of a bad person who is infiltrated into the bad guys. Now, we know that happened during Antifa and BLM. We had troops that had infiltrated those gangs and such. And watch what's happened. It's pretty quiet out there right now, isn't it? There's probably a reason for that. Or they've morphed into other areas, and now probably there's some good guys in those areas too that are playing bad guys in order to collect intel on what's going on. The military and the good guys aren't just sitting there twiddling their fingers. They're not doing this. They're in there fighting. There's a lot of good people fighting. And then there's people out there that have been blackmailed who may be informants with the good guys, and or that are truly blackmailed, and that people are being held hostage. This is one of those things that if you study Satanism or Luciferianism and how they compromise people, it would be hard for people to get their arms around this, to understand how evil these people are and the depths that they're willing to go to. I have friends that do a deliverance. They're in a deliverance ministry. When they rescue people out of these compromised situations, and the stories that go along with them are heartbreaking. A lot of people won't have the stomach to listen to what actually goes on, but sometimes they'll put them in a double bind, which means that they have to make the choice. But either way, it's a lose-lose situation. And then they can say, see, you're a bad person. You're evil, just like we are. And then they start working on their minds and such. So like, for example, one example I know of is a little girl who was taken in, and she had her sister there, and or a sister or a baby. And they said, you either kill this baby or we will kill your sister.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing, where it's not really a choice. It really isn't a choice, because they're putting on a child the responsibility of someone dying, or they'll manipulate it. Like they'll give somebody a puppy and say a puppy to take care of that puppy for a while. And then they'll say, you either break the puppy's legs, you abuse the puppy, you do this, or we'll kill your sister. Yeah. And so now you've got someone who is there by incremental steps, compromising them and turning them into what they are.
Yeah.
And it's serious. So we've got to be a little bit careful with our judgments on people. Certainly that doesn't excuse the behavior. I'm not saying that, but we really have to have a great deal of discernment in situations and not jump at the first headline that floats past our head just so that we can be in the know on things and want to be a step ahead of everybody for accepting information. Sometimes we need to just sit back and go, well, That's kind of interesting. Let's see how this shakes out a little bit. Take a few trips around the building and not react right away, but to put some thought into it instead of just, okay, we want to divide people up into good people and bad people and have teams, because that's what they want.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They want division and violence. That gives them an excuse to bring in NATO, lock us down, do whatever they want.
Yeah,
So far, they have not been able to do it.
The bad guys are the bad guys, and they know exactly what they're doing. And there's going to come a point in time where it's going to be, the wrath of God is going to pour out on these people, and it will be a righteous judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It
So
could be going on in the background right now.
It probably is.
Yeah. Does anyone think that Trump did not know about our government and what's going on?
I believe
around the world before he got in. And does anyone think that he would just like leave office?
I think he knew. I think he knew a lot of things for many years, and I think a lot of the things he did, all the TV shows, the movies. I every now and then I find out about a new scene that he did in a movie that I'd never seen before, and it's just supposed to be humorous. But I think all those things were planned, and they set him up as a celebrity, as a person that people found entertaining, somewhat harmless, or maybe oriented toward business, because we needed a businessman in office. All those kinds of things, those considerations. I think he knew and was set up for a long time.
Yeah.
I believe you're right. And so I'm going to correct everybody here. It's President Trump, the rightful president of the United States. Have to say that in at least one show. And, I just wish well for his family and all the patriots that are out there fighting behind the scenes that maybe we don't see right now, but we know everyone is out there. And I think that when the shoe drops here, the other shoe drops, it's just a matter of time. We really need to be prepared. Not just the biggest preparation we need to do is not with necessarily the food or making sure we're taken care of, because you know what? God can make anything bloom right in front of us. Our trust is in God. It's in the Lord God Almighty, because he can take care of us in the midst of nothing. And so we don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be, afraid of the future. We need to just trust in God himself, and things just kind of work out. He always makes a way. And you have to come to terms with the fact that our lives are going to end in this world, this realm. Our lives are going to end. We are temporary. This is a temporary body which our spirit is inhabiting. That spirit does not die. Our soul does not die. We just shed the sweater, and our imperfect bodies are something that we are going to detach from. It's a temporary thing. And then trust God to know that, it's going to be okay. Whatever we are here for, to learn or to do the good works to do, that's okay. We don't have to be afraid of leaving that. And it's probably a really good thing that we do leave it, because we leave our sins behind, and that's okay. And we go back to God from whence we came. So there is nothing to fear. We're kind of like on assignment. We're here on assignment, and that assignment's going to end. So once you realize that, and you know that's okay, it's an okay thing. You don't have any fear no matter what comes, because you know that God is good all the time. He's always good. I want to read something to you guys a minute. I think this is kind of cool. It was sent to me by a very good person, group of people, friend. Let me see if I can find it here.
We talked about those same concepts while you were not on the show yesterday.
Well, good, because that's where our minds need to be 100% of the time. And I mean 100% of the time. We need to realize that no matter what we see or go through, no matter what we think we know, we're still only know part of what's going on. I'm going to read something here, just a minute. And engaging in battle. When we're in a battle, we're in battle for sure. We have tools and weapons of warfare. We only have 2 defensive weapons or offensive weapons in the spiritual realm. That's prayer, praying to God Almighty, and the other one is quoting scripture. So I'm going to read this. Blessed is the man who preserves under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the victor's crown, the life God has promised to those who love him. James 1:12. We need the tools in spiritual warfare as well. It has been the underlying purpose of well, from what I'm reading for, it's a book preview to provide practical, useful information and insight into waging of winning warfare. The world, the flesh, and the devil will continuously defeat us if we don't use the weapons of our warfare. The Lord has provided all the tools we need. The Lord Jesus has provided all of our victory. He used the same tools. He used the same tools he has provided us in winning the battle. His victory is our victory. It remains our responsibility to use these weapons so graciously provided in his grace. Every time you use them, you'll thank God for the tools of victory he has provided. And just as we think that with fond remembrance of the man who gave us a toolbox, like when we were kids, we all had one, we can remember that the tools that God gives us are absolutely a lifelong learning process, and we can be grateful for what he's given us. But it comes with studying, truly comes with studying and knowing what God has given us. And we find that in the scripture, in the Bible, and allowing him to talk to us through those scriptures. Sometimes what I would do would be open a Bible up and just let it fall, and then read whatever came up that day and let God talk to us instead of curating. A lot of the curated stuff, or the things that are very religious-y, they're a part of a man is put into that. But when you purely read the Bible, pick it up and say, what do you want me to learn this day? And then ponder it for a minute. Say, how is God talking to me this day? How are you talking to me this day, God? What do you want me to know right now? And then sit and listen and see what happens. It's an amazing process. So,
Great idea.
Yeah. Or, sometimes I'll go to an app. There's several Bible apps that are out there. See what they throw out there is the. So granted, now somebody's probably choosing, this is kind of cool, but we were talking about neighbors, right? Okay. So I just did a Bible Gateway, and let me run to that one a minute. And the verse for the day is Romans 15:2. I generally read around it. Now we who are strong ought to bear the weaknesses of the powerless, and not just please ourselves. Let each of us please his neighbor for his good, for building him up. For even Messiah did not please himself, but as it is written, the insults of those who insulted you have fallen on me. For whatever was written before was written for our instruction, so that through patience and the encouragement of the scriptures we might have hope. Now may the God of patience and encouragement grant you to be like-minded with one another in the manner of Messiah Yeshua, so that together with one voice you may glorify the Lord and God and Father of, may glorify the God and Father of our Lord Yeshua, the Messiah. Therefore, I'm reading this whole thing. This is the word for the day. Accept one another, just as Messiah also accepted you, to the glory of God. For I declare that Messiah has become a servant to the circumcised for the sake of God's truth, in order to confirm the promises given to the patriarchs, and for the Gentiles to glorify God in his mercy, as it is written. For this reason I will give you praise among the Gentiles, and I will sing to your name. And again it says, rejoice, O Gentiles, with his people. And again, praise Adonai, all you Gentiles, and let all the people praise him. And again, Isaiah says, there shall be a shout of Jesse, and there will be a shoot of Jesse. Sorry, I need to get this in front of me a minute here. There will be a shoot of Jesse, and the one who arises to rule the Gentiles. In him shall the Gentiles hope. Now may the God of hope fill you with all joy and shalom and trusting, so in trusting, so you may overflow with hope in the power of God himself. Now I myself am convinced about you, my brothers and sisters, that you are also full of goodness, filled with the knowledge, and also able to counsel one another. But I have written rather boldly to you on some points as to remember, because of the grace given to me by God, to be a servant of Messiah Yeshua to the Gentiles in priestly service and service to the good news of God, so that the offering up of the Gentiles might be pleasing, made holy by God Almighty. So in Messiah Yeshua, I have reason to boast before God, for I will not dare to speak of anything except what Messiah accomplished through me to bring about the obedience of the Gentiles in word and deed, in the power of signs and wonders, in the power of the Spirit of God. So from Jerusalem and around, even to Illyricum, I have fully proclaimed the good news of Messiah. In the way I make it my aim to proclaim the good news, not where Messiah was already named, lest I build on another person's foundation, but as it is written, those who have never been told shall see, and those who have not heard shall understand. That's Romans 15, 1 through 21. And I think that this is important. This is the Tree of Life version of the Bible, which is a Messianic translation, which we've studied for years. And I think it's a significant translation that went back. They went to great pains to go back to the original text in order to have it as accurate as possible. And it even changes the order of the books in the Bible somewhat to be more historically accurate.
It's interesting that the beginning of that is exactly how you opened this show, about helping people and helping your neighbors.
Having one mind. We don't need to argue the finer points or the points on I'm right, she's wrong, whatever. We can sit and, going to a Messianic church for years, it's a very respectful thing. People sit there and listen because there's a different person every week that gives a message. And one person would get up, and the person that's their turn gets up, reads the scripture standing up because that's the voice of God, the Bible itself, in great reverence. Then they sit down and they give their thoughts on what they just heard, like you just did, David. I read the scripture, and then you could give your thoughts on what you heard. Karen could, Ralph could, and then how this means to them, and putting in a very practical point, or how it touched your heart. So hearing that, what are your words that you heard, David?
I heard in the beginning about helping your neighbor, and I don't remember the rest of it. I didn't really understand. But
let me go back and I'll read it again.
That was fascinating. The first paragraph or so.
Let me go back to those first. Now we who are strong ought to bear the weaknesses of the powerless and not just please ourselves. Let each of us please his neighbor for his good, for building him up. For even Messiah did not please himself, but as it is written, the insults of those who insulted you have fallen on me. For whatever was written before was written for our instruction, so that through patience and encouragement of the scriptures, we might have hope. Now may the God of patience and encouragement grant you to be like-minded with one another in the manner of Messiah Yeshua, so that together with one voice you may glorify God and Father of our Lord Yeshua the Messiah.
Yeah, build up people, that don't have your strength. I think that's how we started talking about everything today. People today are like very stressed, nervous. I almost feel like
They're on attack.
They're like, what can I do? They don't know what to do, and there's nothing a human can handle or that's worse than knowing something bad is going on, but not being able to do anything about it. Feeling of hopelessness. And if you can help people that feel that way, we all have some of that going on, but if you can help people and build them up, then you're doing God's work.
Well said.
Any further comments, Karen or Ralph?
I was thinking while you were reading about the unity aspect that Bill and I were, and I don't remember if you were still on the show yet or not yesterday, talking about unity and how there was a problem everywhere we go with unity. And yeah, you were on the show, and I wrote about it in my summary of it, that I think it's not a matter of getting together in an organized political group that's going to solve any problems, that it was just going to be everyone deciding to do the right thing on their own and standing firm. And, you know, we could talk about that from a political perspective, but it's the same in a Christian perspective. If we all do the right thing as individual men and women, then everything else resolves itself. Why isn't our country in a good state right now? Because we're not standing on faith, number one, all the time. We don't need a group of people to do that, but it's helpful. And as Bill said, it starts with the family. The political unit starts with the family. It starts in the family unit. And true, a church, if it's acting like a group of families coming together to worship God as they're supposed to do, then it's a mutually edifying organization of people, but it starts rooted in the family with God as the authority, as the father of all. And that's where the unity comes from. If you're all aiming in the same direction, it's like the yellow brick road. And whether you're dancing or you're walking and you're getting apples thrown at you, if you're all looking toward the same goal, you follow the same path. There is no other way. And it's laid out before you easy as pie.
Ralph?
Well, I guess another thing that I kind of took away from that is closer to the end about basically not preaching to the choir, but going out and talking to the people that haven't already been reached with the word, you know. And there's a lot of people in religious situations that refuse to talk to anyone who doesn't already agree with them 100%, you know. And that goes against everything that Jesus taught. And I think that's, you know, it's an important thing to keep in mind, that be willing to talk to the people that are not already 100% aligned and in agreement with you as well.
Yeah, all good things. So, well, it's 11:06, so let's do the thing, and then we'll be back on tomorrow with Off the Grid. Maybe tomorrow will be a little bit more, I'll be a little bit more prepared. I have had a very long week so far, so I don't know about you guys, but I'm hoping to get my head in the game for tomorrow instead of being in crisis mode full time this week, except for my nice visit with Madonna's mom and dad, Silvio and Joan. That was really fun. So anyhow, let's say a prayer here. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so very, very much for this wonderful time that we can join together as friends and just talk about everything and nothing at the same time. And hopefully people that are out there watching this will feel blessed on some of the things that they hear, that they know that they're not alone, that there's many of us out there that just want to be normal people, living our lives with our families and being able to sit down together and visit and just enjoy your world, everything that you've made, including each other. Help us to see the world through your eyes, each other, and accept people at where they are instead of where we think they need to be, because our opinions don't matter in this. It's all yours, and we are very grateful for that. We ask that you would bring all of the evil forward that's being committed, and so that we can deal with that, bring it out in the light, shine your light right upon it, so that it will, melt in your presence. We thank you for the beautiful day that you've given and the work that you've given us to do. We like working. We like to have a purpose. So show us what it is that you want us to do today, so that we can do something fun. It's kind of an adventure being here, and we love every minute of it, both good and things that we enjoy and the challenges that we face, because ultimately you always bring about good for everything. I ask your blessings on David, Ralph, and Karen, and give them a wonderful day today. They're wonderful friends. Let their favor rest upon them and all those whom they love, and give them all surprises today, some sort of a wonderful surprise, so that they can really get a smile out of it. And same thing for everybody listening out there. Give them something today that would mean something only to them, that would make their hearts happy and joyful, and help them keep their eyes on you at all times. Thank you for everything. You've been a great friend to us, and we want to be a friend to you. Thank you for the scriptures you've given us in the Bible. We're very, very grateful that we can come to you every day, and that you will talk to us and show us what it is that you want us to know. We want a conversation with you, a real relationship every minute of our day, so that we can, we just love you, and we're thankful for every minute of our time together. In Jesus' precious name we pray, amen.
Amen.
So, with that said, here we go, guys. That part of the show. Ding, ding, ding. Go to BrandenburgForGovernor.com, because I'm the best non-conceder who has not conceded in history of the United States. I'm not conceding. I will not concede to liars, cheats, and thieves. And we're going to keep fighting this thing out. We're fighting this thing out until we're done with it. And I think it's getting close. I really do. So with that said, we just got to stand firm, unwavering, not backing down, and not losing our heart. Don't let things demoralize you, because you know what? No matter what happens here, we got a Papa that he made this place. He can revive this place. He can redeem this place. So our faith is in him. They got nothing over them. They can't win this one. How do you win over the creator of heaven and earth? You don't. You just don't. Okay, that's like a fool's game right there. So don't let it get you down. We're in a good spot. And with that said, those two of us that have hands, we can do the heart hands. So have none. God, there you go. God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. Make it a great day. It starts here and here and here. Approach it with a heart and a mind, and ask God for discernment, and we'll be just fine. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.